I'm going to start the speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, we do understand that currently K-pop industry is such a trend. We can see that the K-pop industry is such a trend worldwide. Even in certain area, K-pop industry become even in certain area, some people perceive the K-pop industry as a trend, and everything that the people who involved in K-pop industry is currently doing is something that should be perceived as a role model, or maybe in terms of fashion, in terms of your makeup, or how you should look like. It becomes the role model for everyone in the world, and this is the status quo that we cannot regret in this debate, right? And also we think that the existence of this K-pop industry as a trend creates a space for people, or for people, either for women or for men, to reflect on them. What does this mean? This means that there is a certain standard that we need to fulfill, especially when we as women. There's a certain standard we need to fulfill because currently this is the trend that we need to follow, and everyone relies on this, right? Why is this problematic? First of all, we think that women are different, right? Everyone have their own identity, everyone have their own uniqueness, right? We think that the existence of this K-pop industry are only going to put certain standards. Meanwhile, as an individual, we should celebrate our uniqueness. We should have the space to love ourselves, or maybe just to be true with our identity, right? As opening government, what we're going to do here is that we want, what do we mean with aggressively oppose? Is that first of all, we want to publicly declare that we do not support trend in K-pop industry in a form of objectification of the women. So for example, women should look like this, or there is the certain physical standard, like you should be physically fit, or you should be physically beautiful, because this is the standard that everyone currently rely on, right? Then also we want to calling out all the agencies to put more standard in the K-pop industry itself, like to show to the people that the K-pop industry is not just about you should be you should look like cheerful, or you should look beautiful, you should look thin, but moreover we want to call out all of these agencies to put more choices for this woman to look like. No, thank you. And therefore our stance at opening government here is that we want to create the inclusivity for all women, that everyone is unique, right? First of all, let's deal with the interest of the feminists. First of all, the K-pop portrayal, the current situation is that K-pop portrayal of women as cheerful or physically fit, physically good, right? What does this mean? This means that there is this kind of portrayal simplify the standard that women should fit into this kind of standard. This means that there is the utopist world, there is the utopist standard that you need to fulfill, especially as women. So we think that it puts more the expectation for the society that women should look like this, that women should be like this, because that's the only way for them to be portrayed as someone good. Because basically people rely so much on this trend, people rely so much on this standard, right? And another harms will be integrated to my second argument, right? So here, the interest of the feminist movement is that these feminists really celebrate the uniqueness of the woman, really appreciate someone's identity. Therefore, they want to oppose this kind of bold standard, because first of all, they want to protect the woman, and second of all, they want to protect the followers who simply feel in confidence with the existence of this certain standard that is created by the K-pop industry, right? Because maybe their followers think that the moment when I cannot fulfill the standard, that's the moment when the society can easily discriminate me, or can easily exclude me from the society, or maybe I cannot have the space to start a relationship with someone, because basically men also rely on this standard. Some men still think that if you want to have the girlfriend, my girlfriend should look like this, my girlfriend should be physically fit, my girlfriend should be good looking, simply, right? And so, second of all, why is this also within the interest of the movement? Within the interest of the feminist movement is because this feminist movement wants to gain their followers. How they want to gain these followers with this by opposing this trend? It's because they want to show to the people, to the women especially, who are currently not really progressive but not really conservative. Maybe because they basically reject or opposing this standard, but they don't think that there is someone that can manifest their idea, that there is no platform that can speak out about us, voice out about their awareness, for example, right? So they think that the existence of this feminist movement can at least manifest their idea, can at least manifest what has been their concern since the very first place, right? So we think that this also going to benefit this feminist movement in terms of showing the gray people who not really progressive, that there is a chance to oppose this, and also they want these people to opt out from these circumstances for far too long have been treated them unjustly, right? Let's second of all, let's deal on the practicalities. Why is this K-pop industry are bad, and that's why this feminist movement need to take an act. First of all, this like what I've told you, this create the pressure for women to fit into the certain standard. Meanwhile, women are unique, so there is this standard that you need to fulfill, like you should be physically good, you should be thin, or simply you cannot have stretch mark. You need to be so thin. You have to have good skin color, for example. Yes, please.
Are you pushing beauty pageant as feminist movement?
we're not going to talk about beauty pageant because currently beauty pageant also being more progressive. Like you can see, like in Miss Universe pageants, for example, or in Miss World pageants, for example, they also celebrate the uniqueness of the woman. Even right now, we can see that the current winner of the Miss Universe or of the Miss Universe title is someone who came from African, right? So they also already celebrate the uniqueness of the woman. And second of all, why is this the trend of K-pop industry is bad and why the feminist movement needs to take an act? It's because the existing of this trend are only going to create bigger space to discrimination towards women. First of all, it creates the discrimination toward your relationship with someone. Let's say you're going to have meaningful relationship either with your boyfriend or either you just want to create the relationship with the people you think you will fit into their communities, right? Of course, when you're going to fit into certain circumstances, into certain community, you need to fit what has become their interest. Sometimes when we're going to find the community that can fit us, they have the standard like yeah, you should look like us regardless of what your capabilities, what your capacities. There is the standard that you need to fulfill, because if you want to join us, for example, you need to fit this standard. And also, this is not just work for the community, but it also feel the insecurities toward this woman simply when they want to integrate to certain communities, when they think that I cannot fit their standard. Like let's say I'm a discrimination, I'm a part of discriminator. Like let's say I'm from Eastern, so I want to join the Western community, right? Meanwhile, the Western people most likely look like a white skin or what. So this creates the standard for me that I have to physically look like them in order to fit their community. This will create more pressure toward this women, like they will feel stressed or they will feel excluded from the society simply because they cannot fit the standard, simply because there's the insecurities coming from the worldliness, simply because there's insecurities coming from how the society are currently portraying the way you should look like the society are no longer portray you as someone unisex, for example. Like this also going to work, let's say when you're going to find a job. Currently there is the changing behavior in the corporation because corporations are very, very profit oriented. So the trend of the K-pop industry puts certain requirement to jobs. There is the changing behavior, like in order you want to fit some job, you have to good behavior. But right now there's the current changing behavior that you should have, you should be physically good because that's how you are going to benefit our company, right? So this creates the standard for this corporation as well, just to allow you to join their company, because like what I told you, the corporation most likely rely on the profit, and of course they want the representation that can bring more profit towards them, because basically people look you on how you look like. And people don't care about what's your capacity, what your capability, because that is simply the things that they don't see. It's an abstract thing. So for those reasons, we're proud to open this debate. Thank you.
Opening opposition also concede the fact that feminist movement aim for freeing women or gender in general in terms of their self-agency, expression, and self-actualization. But what OG fails to tell you is that in the case of beauty standard, there is a spectrum of why something can be perceived as acceptable and what is not. What they're trying to tell you in their side is that all the blame should go to the K-pop industry due to the fact that they have this high beauty standard, when in fact, they never really explain to you why in the issue of beauty standard, it's not only about this is the only role model that I have, because in the current status quo, we already have lots and lots of beauty standard in the Western. For example, you also have this thick body like Kim Kardashian, and you also have this more Asian types of body, or even like Indian types of body and stuff. But the general idea of beauty standard is still pandering to the same idea. For example, long hair, lighter skin and the like. So at the end of the day, the idea of the beauty standard that comes from opening government does not really explain why we have to aggressively oppose K-pop industry. We assume that aggressively opposing this in opening government means that they're going to condemn every single action that shows that there is a beauty standard. For example, you have to have monolid or double eyelid, or even like your hair color should be in certain way. Similarly to those K-pop idols like BTS for male or for Twice for women, for example. So in my speech, I'm going to talk about two things. Number one, why opposing does not matter to the issue of feminists. Second of all, why the nature of K-pop industry cannot entail the needs of these people to still pander to that beauty standard. Two things to the opening opposition. First, in the idea of internalizations of beauty standard, we think that what they said is that people are generally have beauty standard, and now we are pandering to that basically because of K-pop industry. We don't think so, because K-pop industry creates and is more innovative compared to those from Western or Hollywood, because we now have more, we have various types of beauty standard in K-pop industry, and therefore self-agency that they want to talk about does not present in their case. While in our side, we know that being beautiful can be very different from one to another. So the feminist agenda that you have to push is not saying that this is bad, but showing the diversity that comes from the other. For example, Indonesian may look darker, or like certain in African people are basically darker because of that. So we are opposing a skin whitening and still explain and able to have a fashionable lifestyle, despite the fact that you may not pander to specific beauty standard. Second of all is that feminist movement, she says that they said that it's opposing the discrimination. We think that the discrimination that you want to talk about is already being done by feminist movement in the current status quo by portraying that there are another alternative to the beauty standard that you have. So the issue of K-pop industry needed to be aggressively opposed does not and will not be won by opening government. First contention, why opposing does not matter. As we have told you that self-agency, expression of self-actualization is the most important thing that the feminist movement have in their agenda. However, when you're talking about the beauty standard or the other ways of showing yourself, this self-agency expression and actualization definitely is going to be influenced by the trend and lifestyle in the current status quo. It's different because in the previous era, the influence is coming from the Western or Hollywood or coming from local culture. However, now you have an additional standard that you can get into, for example, like this K-pop industry becoming more Eastern, for example, due to the fact that basically Korean people are just definitely lighter than most people in Africa, for example. So the idea of K-pop industry having this toxicity in terms of having their idol, we don't think that matters more, because at the end of the day, this is a refreshing image due to the fact that K-pop industry does not only talk about beauty standard, but they also show talent, hard work, and achievement that you can talk about. For example, we have BTS in the Grammy, for example, a very groundbreaking of a music industry in the world, because it has always been saturated by the Western artists or Western people who are working in that. Even if there is an issue of physical attractiveness, it's more nuanced because you now have a diverse cosmetic industry needing the beauty standard that people want to follow, or it's more emphasizing on skincare, for example, instead of the cosmetic at the end of the day. And even more so is that there is a prevalent existence of male and gender neutral through boy band, for example, because you now have NCT who are also wearing makeup, which is showing that the capacity for other male and another non-binary people to also express themselves in another form of way. So I think at the end of the day, the idea of beauty standard, although we don't necessarily able to have the discrimination be abolished, under their side is going to be very harmful because you are going to blame it on one side. While in our side, we think that liberation and the diversity of that is continuously being assessed, but with the parameter and the purpose and the knowing that this beauty sickness is because we have been internalizing that, not necessarily because there has been trend at the end of the day. Second of all, the nature of K-pop industry. As we see that K-pop industry is having the first wave around 2005 until now. We also know that K-pop is also about Korean culture intertwined with entertainment, with the economic benefits. So it's going to affect the tourism, movies, and drama, as well as having a Korean public image to the world. So the idea of it only emphasizing on, oh, this is bad because you are showing these people should be beautiful because they are in front of camera. So we think that it's just impossible for them to just show up and say that I'm like this. When in fact that there are also more influence that can be created by this idol or K-pop artist, for example, Hwasa Mamamoo, which is basically different from lots of idol in Korea. So we think at the end of the day, it's also talking about the supply and demand of the society, that we want a new form of entertainment, a new wave that needed, for example, to produce a quality of talent, content, and standard of success that is more able to be done by K-pop industry from SM, JYP, and YG, for example. So at the end of the day, we have shown you that feminist agenda to push beauty standard by aggressively opposing does not matter. And at the end of the day, the nature of K-pop industry still is needed because the supply and demand from the society. I'm very proud to oppose.
Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. The agenda of pushing and opposing for the certain beauty standards brought by this K-pop industry is actually very important in the status quo. The fact that the popularity of K-pop industry itself is very robust right now, right? This is the reason why as OG, we're going to oppose and aggressively oppose those beauty standardizations of or objectification of women within that K-pop industry, right? Also, we're going to, of course, we're still going to maintain another agenda, like for example, pushing for educational rights of women, for example. But we think that because K-pop industry is currently becoming the trend and has the huge popularity in the status quo and affecting women itself towards having no self-acceptance, for example, or putting a very high beauty standards, we think that this is the most important agenda that feminist movement has to do currently, right? So I'm going to talk about, in my sections, I'm going to talk about the inclusivity feminist movement as should be inclusive for all women regardless of their background. But before that, I'm going to respond to the opening opposition's case. I'm going to deliver 2 responses. First of all, on the response on their argumentation saying that about self-agency and also self-actualizations. We think that this is not happening. This is not true. Literally happening inside of the K-pop industry itself, because we think that there is a huge glorification on K-pop industry due to the fact that it's currently very popular within the media, right? The idols are also forced to actually perceive image as a calm women, for example. So we think that these glorifications of the women of the objectification towards women within the K-pop industry is actually harming the women itself as the followers of this feminist movement, right? So if they would like to talk about this self-agency, this is self-actualizations of those people who would like to show themselves with the certain beauty standards that they have, for example, we think that this is actually harming more people or more women in the status quo itself, right? Because the glorification causes women to actually put very high standards on beauty within that K-pop industry itself. On the second response, talking about, they told you how there is a culture information, like for example, K-pop idols can also achieve many achievements in Grammy, for example. We think that first, this is not like the main achievement that the K-pop industry are actually showing towards the whole media, right? But what is the main agenda of this whole K-pop industry to actually buy the market, for example, is that they are showing that their talent is actually beautiful, for example, or having a thin body, or is actually fulfilling the standard of beauty in the status quo, right? That is the way on how they are going to, for example, win the market or have the attentions of people to actually watch this K-pop industry itself, right? That's why we think that from this objectification of women, that they try to use and utilize certain beauty standards towards women, for example, they gain profits, they gain achievement from that. We think it is also unjustifiable for the feminist movement itself to support it, right? So those are the responses for opening of positions. So let's take a look on my extension point. I'm going to talk about how then the feminist movement itself should be an inclusive movement for all women regardless of their background. So we understand that feminist movement has so many agenda. This is what my first speaker has told you. For example, feminist movement have worked massively on campaigning for education rights for women, or for example, safe public transportation for women. And we think that this agenda is not yet fully implemented by government, but at least there is a progressive inside of that agenda. For example, when government create a scholarship quotas for women, or accessible scholarship for everyone that we have currently in status quo, or for example, women special carriage on trains, for example. So we think that on this agenda, feminist movement is actually already progressive on winning the government's policy on that, right? Therefore, we think that the agenda on the opposing beauty standard in the status quo itself is still on a very long way, right? Then why this agenda is actually matters? Because we think that this has been glorified in so many industries, for example, entertainment industry. The moment when the producers choose the certain actors on women, for example, they are opposing standards of this type of women that has to be an actress in the movies, for example, and also mostly are being glorified in a certain other industries, for example, in creating a beauty products, or like putting a face of women to become to become the representative of a certain beauty products, right? The reason why this agenda is matter simply because this has been glorified by so many in so many industries. Therefore, we think that this is urgent and very important for feminist movement to actually take action to aggressively oppose the certain K-pop industry, right? Therefore, especially when K-pop industry hits to popularity in entertainment, we think it's worse than the case that we have in the status quo, right? Because most of the time, women is very hard to actually find the government's friendly policies about self-acceptance, or diminishing about all the beauty standards itself in the status quo, right? But therefore, we think that as the feminist movement, it is very important to actually directly, aggressively oppose these types of agenda. Therefore, like in the future, we're going to have a more friendly policies from the government. For example, like in the entertainment industry, there's not going to be certain standards on choosing actors, or for example, picturizations of beauty standards in certain beauty products, right? Therefore, we think that this is a very important agenda for feminist movement, aside from the other agenda like education or safer public transportation. But on to the second extension, I'm going to talk about how then this is going to impact towards the movement allies itself. So we believe that the other movement allies of the feminist movement is that the other social movements, right? For example, LGBT, TIA plus movements, and so on and so forth. We think that the common interest of all of this movement is that on how they are going to create a safe environment for their followers. For example, in the feminist movement itself, they would like to create a safe environment for the woman itself. So we think that under our side of the house, we think that the woman, when we are opposing a trend, which is the K-pop industry, that is harming the woman itself as the followers of our industry, we think that we're able to at least get attentions from the other social movements that has become our allies, right? At least that when we are opposing a certain trend that is harming our followers, which is the movement, we are able to actually gain attractions from the other social movements that is becoming our allies in terms of, for example, pushing for the government's agenda, or pushing for the government's policy in order to create in order to diminish certain objectifications towards women in the industries, right? Therefore, we think that on that movement allies, we think that it is very important to actually maintain this feminist movement, since we do believe that the agenda of feminist movement itself has not been achieved clearly and fully on the status quo. By those reasons, we're very proud to propose. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, don't buy what OG tells to you. They never portray to you how aggressively would they oppose this kind of condition, the K-pop industries, the justification why only K-pop industries should be the main focus of the feminist movement to be opposed aggressively from the very first place. Their stance are inconsistent and we don't understand what they want or the end goals that they want to reach from the very first place. That's why we should kick out OG from this debate. Simply saying, even if they do have winning the debate about the beauty pageant, we say that this is not only the fault of the K-pop industries, but it is the whole world, because we are living in a patriarchal society where the solution is not to abolish beauty standard, but to give more option or to give more accessibility to all people to understand which kind of preference that they want to have, which kind of beauty standard they want to have at the end of the day. This should be the focus of the feminist movement rather than opposing one industries, which I will tell more about how sporadic and how the spectrum of beauty standard existing a lot inside even the K-pop industries, all the whole world. Because in 1990s or even 80s before, probably people will say that if I'm blondie or I'm white or I'm tall and I have a big body, I will be handsome or I will be beauty. But nowadays there are more options and more availability of preferences because of the K-pop industries coming in, the Asian standard also coming in, and now it circulates around the society. Now everybody knows that Asian also are beautiful, not only westernized people from the very first place. This is why we proudly, as the feminist movement or as a normal human being, love ourselves in itself, and the inclusivity also exists in ourselves. We will take the argumentation from opening government from the very first place. Okay, they keep talking about how people will want to have a boyfriend like BTS, for example, or how people will have a girlfriend like Kim Yuna or something like that. But it is impossible. Differentiate between sweet dreams or idolization or adoring somebody which actually gaining into a relationship, which probably I will still go and marry Indonesian people because I'm Indonesian, not going to have a beauty standard like Korean people, for example. So we shouldn't blame K-pop industries from the very first place. So let's jump into my argumentation from the very first place about why we shouldn't blame K-pop industries from the very first place. Understand that K-pop industries are the same with all industries in Western or in Indonesia, which they create sinetron, or even in Western they create telenovela. It is all about rating and about supply and demand. So we cannot blame the K-pop industries because basically the K-pop industries are trying to fulfill the rating or the demands from the society. The beauty standard coming from the society, not coming from the K-pop industries. Understand this to understand how the beauty standard are actually circulating around, and we cannot just see single blaming the K-pop industries just because they are now famous or they are now popular in the world. This is not the justification, and we don't want you guys to buy the argumentation coming from the government benches, because they will probably only blame K-pop industries, which also have the sporadic and the spectrum or different beauty standard in each entertainment industries, like how SM and YGs have different beauty standard for their actress, for their idol from the very first place. So in a pragmatical analysis, you will waste your time to go and complain aggressively towards this one industries. Probably you will win against SM, but it means that you will have another job to kill YG Entertainment or GYP, for example. So it is an endless fight where we cannot win, ladies and gentlemen. So it will be better if we giving the inclusivity or giving the option or make people realize that you have that option, you have your own beauty standard, and you can choose or pick one at the end of the day, because K-pop industries, Western industries, and whatsoever are based on the rating and the demand of the consumer from the very first place. So if you want to blame yourself for not be able to be decisive and pick your own beauty standard. Don't blame other people. That is why we say that this is the argumentation where only opposing the K-pop industries is not strategical and is not logistic from the very first place. So let's see, even if the aggressive movement does exist in the status quo, or all of the feminist movement are having a concession that we will kill K-pop industries or oppose them aggressively, understand this. Yes, probably YG or SM will try to comply to your demand, but at the end of the day, they will still go back to the beauty standard they have set it, because the beauty standard, the consumer, the demands are still existing there. If they didn't comply to the demand, they will not be able to survive, and they will lose in the competition of the rating and demands. Ladies and gentlemen, understand this. The industries are profit-oriented. They don't care about your beauty standard, but they care about the demand and rating. So if they just simply following what the feminist movement want, they won't be able to survive, and this is illogical from the very first place. Therefore, we believe this kind of solution coming from feminist movement is pointless, ladies and gentlemen, because the stance is unclear, how to reach that condition is unclear. That's why we don't want that. Even second, the argumentation of how or the response of the society towards the feminist movement will go even worse, ladies and gentlemen. Because why? Because they will only see feminist movement as a bad influence or a bad movement that are trying to hamper my industries or hamper my idle base camp to make or to give the proper solution toward or to give the treatment towards my idol from the very first place. Probably by having the feminist movement aggressively opposing them, like maybe going into the industries and go demo and halted all the industries work progress or whatsoever, it will only create or give tension towards the consumers, towards the fans, towards this SM or YG's idols like BTS and so on and so forth. This will only make feminist movement in a bad condition where they will only be seen as radical or extreme from the very first place. We don't want that as feminist movement from the very first place. That's why our main focus are to give option to make people realize that in this world, we should pick on ourselves what we really want, not just following the beauty standard and have more than things. Other than that, by having K-pop industries, actually, don't you think it is good for feminist movement and we should celebrate it from the very first place? Why? Because K-pop industries are the example that probably maybe African industries or maybe black colored person industries can also exist in the future, ladies and gentlemen. And this should be celebrated because now we are opening more exposure that beauty standard can be so different from one another, and we can just make one standard only, and people should just choose from one of it at the end of the day. This is the reason why the spectrum or why the beauty standard is not the problem here, and the feminist movement shouldn't oppose aggressively towards the K-pop industries within the argumentation or the reasonings that inclusivity exists more in our side. Also, we are not only trying to abolish beauty standard in such a radical way or make feminist movement have a bad name or have a bad popularity from the very first place in the entire society, but we are trying to make feminist movement to be able to be with the other people and share their experience or share their kind of thinking or the discussion or the discourse within the society that beauty standard is not only single things only. Thank you.